Hi, good evening. Tonight we are talking with Dickie Marcum, and it was a very controversial and highly debated truth that happened with him, but it's been an inspirational truth, and he's here to share his opinions and lessons and wisdom on being a racist and now a reformed racist. We are recording inside MediaWorks Studio in Windsor, Ontario. I am Kari Benson, and this is my partner,
Brenee
Ouellette. Sorry, excuse me.
I want to work on that.
It's
only been 10 years.
That's why I call her Bree. Because I'm not good at it. So, welcome, Dickie. Thank you so much for being here and taking the time to talk with us, and we're ready to learn.
All right. What do you want to know?
All right.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, Dickie was in the media recently for covering a tattoo that was causing him some serious problems. He's a former, white supremacist, he would consider himself. And
Yes.
and in his lifetime he's kind of learned the error of his ways and he's come to regret his decision of getting the tattoos and also the just the decisions he's made in regards to how he felt about colored people and any minorities. So we want to get that kind of reformed opinion and just ask some questions that I guess we've kind of been stumped on as people of color as to why anyone would dislike us for just the plain color of our skin. And I know in some of your posts and some of your interviews you've mentioned that it started with just bullying and assault as a teenager, and to the point where eventually you actually had to leave school because of all of the harassment and the bullying and the assaults. So I kind of wanted to get into that about where it kind of took a turn for you.
So, when I was growing up, racial slurs were all around me. You know, especially being a white kid, you hear a lot of things from friends, family, strangers. If they're around other white people and they have racial views, they're very open about it because you are white, so they don't feel like they have anything to hide. So, growing up, there were other racist families in the neighborhood. I did live in a predominantly black neighborhood. And being around those kids and listening to their parents talk and how their parents talk and the things they were saying in their house and the things that I was exposed to, as I got older into my teenage years, a lot of the things that I was hearing made sense in an ignorant way, if that makes sense.
Can you give us an example?
Stereotypes. So you always hear about, black children and teenagers that droop their pants.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of white racists look at that as gang related or something like that. So that stereotype kind of gets pushed on you. And when you're around enough kids who happen to be in that fashion, who talk a certain way because of whether it be music or TV or what have you, it's almost like it fits the narrative. You heard those stereotypes, you're seeing their actions, and yeah, they're children. They don't know any better. They don't know what they're doing. They're fitting in with a fad, and that was something that I didn't understand at the time. Now, growing up, being one of the few white kids in my school, I got picked on. So I felt like, all these kids that are picking on me that happen to be black, I didn't really feel like they were picking on me because I wasn't somebody they refused to get to know. I did feel like it was because I was white, because it was always black kids who I had an issue with, but
So,
the amount of black went to
so
school with.
would you say that at that time where you were, you felt like the minority and you felt like you were being discriminated against?
Yes.
Okay.
And it got so bad that for my safety, I had to get pulled out of my freshman year of high school.
Right. Now, were your parents, like, how were your parents' views when it came to black people, people of color, period?
My mom didn't really have any views. My dad, he didn't really have any views that I would consider white supremacist or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, certain things may have left his mouth that who I am now, I wouldn't say.
Mm-hmm.
But with him, I did notice growth in him as I got older.
Okay.
Things about him started to change. I ended up, in my youth, I did make friends with two black girls,
Mm-hmm.
who I'm still friends with to this day, Shayla and Deidre.
Mm-hmm.
And he fell in love with them. He absolutely fell in love with them. And we're talking about a man who at one point did say that if I ever brought a black girl home, that would be a problem. And then I brought two home, and he was head over heels in love with these girls. Which was one common problem I've found since I came out to the public about getting my swastika covered up. A lot of people, black, white, Hispanic, are raised in families where it's a stick to your own kind mentality when it comes to finding a partner and forming a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So for my dad to have that view, I personally don't have that view, but seeing how many people do, I can understand why a parent may have that mentality.
Mm-hmm. Well, what did you find to be the reasons behind that? Like, this is where it gets complicated because, like you had said, back then you had, hatred towards black people because of incidences that were happening to you and beliefs based off of stereotypes and so forth. Also, hearing it, and you had friends that were racist. How did you juggle having friends that were racist and then friends that were black? Because the conversations had to be two different types of experiences.
So, well, me having friends who were black, and I know that this stereotype, anyone of color who I've talked to about this specific topic wants this stereotype to die. And it's, they didn't act black.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
That was my mentality at the time.
Mm.
They didn't act a certain way. They acted like a white person.
Ghetto.
To be the best way to put it. And with the talks that I've had and the education that I've received through those talks, when it comes to how black people who speak properly, we're talking 200 years ago. If they spoke properly, that's because they could afford to have an education.
It's still happening today. It's definitely, it's definitely still happening today because I can tell you from experience that I've had people actually say to me, "Oh, what's your nationality?" On the phone, you sounded white. You spoke so proper. That actually happened to me, and I couldn't even I just couldn't even believe it. How am I supposed to take this job and work for you? And that's your thought process.
Yeah.
And those are.
Is that why they called you in? Is that why they called you in for a face-to-face interview?
I guess I sounded good on the phone.
And your name and everything else.
And my name is simple. Like, it's nothing. That would say, and it's just it's a sad reality that we are living in, and that was one of the things because you had said your friends, I believe, Jeff, and the girls, Deidre and Shayla, like they were exceptions. You said, and
yes.
But how did they feel about that? Like, I can understand how some people would say, oh yeah, they're the good blacks, but as black people, they're not considering you one of the good whites. So how would they feel about you kind of corresponding with these people and maintaining these relationships when they feel this way?
Shayla and Deidre, there were a lot of things that I said in front of them that should have never came out of my mouth. And they just brushed it off. They never told me that it bothered them, so I never stopped. Never stopped with the views that were forming in my head. I never stopped with the teachings I was receiving from people in the neighborhood. I just never stopped. With Jeff, on the other hand, there was one time I did say something, and he put me in my place.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me if we weren't friends, I'd have broke your jaw.
Mm-hmm.
So I refrained from saying anything in front of him because he was my friend. I didn't want to upset him. And once I realized he was upset, I didn't want to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
Well, moving forward with that mentality, by the time I graduated high school, I would consider myself at that point a white supremacist. I collected Nazi memorabilia. I practiced the 14 words. There were a lot of different things in my life that I held on to and I cherished because they were the only things that made me at the time feel comfortable. And I met this woman named Jamie, and we were together for about 6 months. First woman I ever said I love you to. And she was kidnapped and sexually assaulted by a black man.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happened, that was it for me. I lost contact with Shayla and Deidre. I got my tattoo on my chest, and it was so bad we had to move out of state because his family knew where we lived.
Right.
So I felt like because of this black guy, my entire life was just destroyed. The one woman that I've ever said I love you to was just violated in one of the most violent ways possible. I had to leave my own home to move out of state to get away from people who might come after us.
Mm-hmm.
I had to go to court proceedings and see this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Being that young and dealing with that, it twisted up an already warped mind.
Just
Right.
kind
I
of
was-
confirmed your beliefs already, solidified all of
Far
it.
gone.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, there was no saving me.
Hmm.
Well,
And how long did that go on for?
are you talking the,
Like
the
how
full
long-
span of having that mentality, or
Yeah.
just
How long
Because
did
at that
you...
point, you were already collecting the memorabilia. You had already kind of decided, like
This was
you
who
had
you
your,
are.
you know what I mean. You had your beliefs on certain people of color, and so how did it get worse from there? How did it change you from what you were already believing?
I, at the time, just believed that I was superior. That's what white supremacists believe. Anyone that is different is a lesser. Well, when this happened to her, the ideas of ethnic cleansing and all of that started to float around in my head.
And did you have a community behind you that agreed with that? Like,
When
not
we moved
necessarily
out
the
of
KKK, but like usually you would have friends in the same circle that kind of believe the same
Yes,
things.
I was around white supremacists, and the where we moved to, if you went there and you're just
I probably
traveling
wouldn't.
you have to fill up your tank and get the hell out of there.
Right.
I
That's where
gotcha.
Okay.
And we stayed out of town for a few months, and when we thought the dust was starting to settle, we came back to Cincinnati, and I started getting work doing construction and concrete. And when you work in construction, you work around a lot of people of color, every culture, every background, whether it be men from Africa who know just enough English to get by to Hispanics with the same thing, just enough English to be able to get a job.
So all the people that you were hating.
Yeah. I wasn't there in my mind. I wasn't there to make friends. I'm there to make a paycheck. I'm going to work with them.
Mm-hmm.
But once I'm off the clock, I want nothing to do with them. And that was my mentality. And it got to the point where, and I've said this before, it seems like they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And we're talking, 14 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And they started pushing themselves on me. They started asking me to hang out outside of work. And, this mentality, since I got the tattoo, I had it for almost a year with the idea that this tattoo is everything to me. Mm-hmm. This mentality is everything to me. Mm-hmm. And they started, there was one time I came out to my car and they're sitting in my car. What the hell are you guys doing? Get out of my car. They refused to get out of my car unless I drove somewhere for all of us to hang out outside of work.
Wow. And do you think that came from the way that you were treating them or the vibe that they were getting from you?
I'd say yeah. I would definitely say I was not respectful. I didn't say anything that would cause me to lose my job. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't polite.
So they understood.
So they were killing you with kindness.
I'm sorry?
They were killing you with kindness.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. They were pissing me off with kindness.
Right?
It honestly worked. They pushed themselves so hard on me to get me to hang out with them or even have just a casual conversation. That I don't know, I started to question, the things that were going on in my head. And the longer that went on, the more aspects of my mentality I started to question. And, pardon me. And when I had the realization that I've never been happy, even with this mentality, I've never been happy. I've always been angry. Mm-hmm. I've always been frustrated. I've always been surrounded by people that I chose to not like. Once I came to the realization that I don't have to live like that, I've lived like that for years. I can't even tell you the amount of weight fell off my shoulders. To get rid of so much of that frustration and that anger. It took time.
On you.
It wasn't a light switch. It definitely took time. I couldn't just turn it off. Mm-hmm. But once I finally woke up one morning and I had to talk with myself. I know most people have conversations with themselves, so I know I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
I asked myself if what I was standing by was worth it. And I couldn't think of one good thing that came from the tattoo or the anger or the frustration and having that mentality and knowing the people that I knew that was in that life. There was no good in it. I couldn't find any. Mm-hmm. So I started to walk away. There were a couple times where I may have, backtracked a little bit, but that was progress. I had to take my time. It wasn't something that I could just turn off in my head and hope that, I can keep this mentality.
Well, you had to unlearn certain...
A lifetime.
And it takes just as long sometimes to unlearn things that we've had embedded, ingrained into our minds and our hearts. It takes some time. And that's expected. But what I wonder too is when you felt this relief from that, what was it that was happening? Because you had these beliefs and you were strong in those beliefs. The beliefs that you had based on stereotypical, biased opinions or however you wanted to look at it. What about those? How did you find out that, hey, these aren't even truth? These aren't even things for me to hate this person for, or these weren't even, wasn't really the situation. It wasn't really what was happening.
It took being around people of color. It took me working in jobs like that. And there was a company that I used to work for. I was there for about 6 years. And when I started there, and we're talking 8 years ago, I was pretty much already out of that mentality, but I still kind of focused on stereotypes. Like if I saw someone wearing like drooped pants and a long white tee, first things that would pop in my head were drug dealing. I started working with guys who were younger than me, who embraced fashion like that, and I got to know them on a personal level. And getting to know them on a personal level showed me that everything that I had been taught about stereotypes was a crock. It was a lie.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are some stereotypes that are true.
Hold some truth.
Right.
Yeah.
Why they exist. But the exaggerated ones that are strictly, race-related or fashion-related, well, if they wear this, that means they do this.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the ones that I found that weren't true.
And I can imagine also working in construction and, like you said, around that, and especially in the States, because there is such a, we hear it all the time about the immigrants and everyone that they want to send back. And those are the jobs that they're kind of forced to take. So I can imagine you being, again, a minority in a situation that you obviously didn't want to be in, but being in that situation and having the kind of change mentality that you had, I imagine you had to see it with your coworkers and your friends when you were going out or when you were even at work, like just the different levels of just racism, discrimination, the bias like that other people were kind of giving to them. What would you do in those situations? Because I imagine you were privy to seeing some of these things.
Are you asking if I were out with them and somebody who had my old mentality would confront them or say things?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I would come to their...
And you would, I imagine you would see it. Like, a lot of people think this is all in our heads, that we're making these instances up or making bigger deals out of situations that than they were. So now that you're on the other side of it, do you see it a lot more?
Yes. Because I'm not trying to focus on, hate and frustration anymore, and the anger that was associated with all that. Now I'm focused on, and for years I've been focusing on loving and understanding. And when you get to sit down with somebody and you talk to them about their own personal experiences and you hear things that if a racist white person heard it, oh no, that didn't happen. There's no way that could be true.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But me being where I've been, with the people that I've been with, it absolutely is true. I've been in a car with a buddy of mine who was black, and we got pulled over because he had tinted windows. And they said that they couldn't see him. And his tint wasn't that dark. That was just an excuse to pull him over.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as he saw a white guy in the car, cop left.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to systemic racism, when it comes to racism among our police forces, it is real. It is a true thing, whether people want to view it that way or not. Like one of the things about white privilege is to say, oh, well, more white people get killed by officers in the U.S. That may be true, but if you break it down and you look at it as a percentage, way more, almost 3 times more black people get killed by officers.
Very disproportionate.
Per capita.
Yeah, it's very disproportionate.
Yeah. So to try to put the ball in your court and say, look, more white people die. Okay. And you're okay with that too?
Right.
Yeah, officers killing people, but they kill more of us, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly. And it's these types of mentalities that are still going on. And what I'm finding across the board, it seems to be the same answers from people who are racist, and it's just the bottom line. It's not happening.
They don't even realize the racist half
right,
the time.
it's not happening because I didn't see it, or because I have friends that are black. I'm not racist. But the reality
The-
is,
here we are talking to somebody who had friends and family
And
members
you
that were
were
black, and he's very much admitting.
much so that you were a white supremacist, and that you were making exceptions, and that's the thing. There shouldn't be.
Oh, I'm not the only one.
Oh no,
Exactly.
no, and that's
Exactly,
what we're
but
trying
that's
to
that
say.
deniability that a lot of people are standing behind as their
Right.
not necessarily even. And I can't say that everyone that believes these things are racist inherently, in the sense that like we believe we're better than you.
Right.
It's more ignorant. I think it's definitely a lot of ignorance. So in that sense, how would you?
Unconscious bias.
Exactly.
Yes.
So from your experiences, what do you think are the best ways for people of color and also people not of color or minorities to kind of combat that against all of the excuses and the kind of, pardon my French, bullshit surrounding the defenses behind these things?
You can cuss all you want. I've actually been holding my tongue. Hey, if I knew we could cuss, I would already. So, to combat, are you talking combat unconscious bias?
Because
Or
I
combat
find
racism?
myself repeating myself over and over again when I'm trying to kind of, I guess, defend my existence, really, is the whole basis behind it. So I'm repeating myself over and over again against these arguments like, oh, there's more black people killing black people, there's, I've got the black friends, things like that. Like, how can we get through all the muddiness of that and just get to the point of having a solution?
Well, you never hear white on white crime, yet 85% of crimes that are committed towards a white person are committed towards another white person in the U.S. So to use black on black crime as an excuse to not like black people, if it's black on black crime, it literally does not affect you. So why do you even have a problem with it to begin with? And I don't hear you complaining about any white person that's ever robbed you or shot at you or broke into your house or used drugs in your driveway. I've never heard anyone complain of those things, but they're going to turn around and say black on black. That's a cop-out.
Oh, yes, agreed.
How it's not. It absolutely is a cop-out. You're finding a way to continue with racist views, whether you want to admit they're racist or not. So when you sit there and you try to put all of the blame, like I heard somebody say that if black people acted right, racism wouldn't exist. And I've said that
I've heard that too.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's look at slavery. They were doing literally everything they were told to do, yet you still had all that hatred, and they were still beneath the white man. They were doing what they were told. How is them acting better
Right.
going to change anything? It's not going to change your view. You're still holding on to, and I'm not saying that black people are acting out. In my opinion, they're not acting up enough. There need to be more protests. There needs to be more accountability when it comes to police officers. There needs to be just systems put in place to protect people of color in a predominantly white country. And to sit there and say that no, we don't need all that. No, they can go to college for free, or they have BET, or all of these black-owned businesses. And BET is a big one. I hear a lot of people complain about that.
That's not black owned
anymore.
anymore.
Heard about all the whitewashed TV shows out there.
And look at even just the shows on BET. How many stereotypes? I said even just the shows on BET. A lot of people don't know BET is not black owned anymore. But the shows that they broadcast now are so full of stereotypes and so full of like all of the crap that we kind of try to get away. There's not really support. Successful colored people on these shows that are not in football, music industry, or you know what I mean, just on their own. There's no black scientists, there's no black doctors, things like that. So even our shows that are supposed to be for us are still portraying those stereotypes.
Yeah.
So I can't leave. Yeah, we have BET, we've got February, our Black History Month and things like that. That again, they're still.
History Month.
Exactly.
Here we go.
I'm still waiting to hear our Black history, to be honest with you, and all of the years of school that I've I've done the month of the Martin Luther King, and yeah, we have the main ones, but there's so much to our Black history that's not taught, that's forgotten about, that people don't realize. I can't trace my family back beyond my great grandmother, and like, you know what I mean? People say, "Well, go back to where you came from." Please tell me where that is. You know what I mean? Because I don't know. There's a lot of options.
With education on Black history, you hear all the time, there isn't a White History Month. Why do we have a Black History Month? Why do we celebrate like Martin Luther King Jr. Day in the U.S. and stuff like that? It's like, the reason that those things are in place, in my opinion, and I'm not saying I don't disagree that it exists, because I'm happy that there is a Black History Month, but I think a lot of that is, it's almost a pacifier for the Black community. Anytime the Black community comes out and is outraged about something, they find something that would be just comfortable enough for people of color to kind of back away from the topic. Yeah. So, well, you're upset about this, so we're going to give you this, and that should shut you up for now.
Yes, and that's what we were talking about too. And this is kind of one of the reasons that we're doing this podcast that we are, is because this is something that repeats itself every time. Something bad happens, people get upset, they come out, they're screaming, they're yelling, they're begging, they're crying, they're angry, they're doing the worst. And then everybody gets quiet again, and then everybody goes away because they are given something to pacify them, to keep them quiet. Go back to your respective corners until the next time, and then next time, and the next time. And I think that this time, in 2020, things are going to be a little bit different this time. I think that enough has happened, and it's just too much now. It's we cannot continue to sit here and debate what we have know has been going on for years and years and years, hundreds of years.
I think that's one of the good things about the pandemic, and especially the whole George Floyd thing happening during the pandemic, is because people were forced to sit at home and watch it.
Yeah.
They couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't hide. You couldn't go to work and pretend it didn't happen. The world was forced to be at home and see it. And then that caused a whole dialogue, and that ended up, a lot of people, I guess, got woke in that sense. You know what I mean? So a lot of people are starting to see a lot of things that were like, oh, wow, like I'm realizing that was racism, that wasn't right. So I think in that sense, the pandemic helped our cause. If it would have happened in any other time, I don't think it would have gotten the attention that it would have just been another, or like it would have been every other hashtag.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, the pandemic is definitely helped the whole Black Lives Matter movement. And with that being said, and you having the tattoos, I can imagine, like, are people, with you especially, because now I imagine you're probably getting slack from both sides. You know what I mean? At least before you had the white vote, right. You know what I mean? But now you're having those people that you used to be friends with that have these opinions and views still. How are those relationships? Like, are they still existent?
They're long dead.
I can.
When I finally woke up enough to realize that what I'm doing was wrong, I started cutting out people. It was almost like a drug. I had to get away from the people that were giving me my drug. Mm. That was the only way I was going to recover. Yeah. So that's what I did. Okay. I had to cut them out.
And so now, because this has been so, public and so forth, I'm sure you get many messages. And do you have people contact you and ask you, how dare you, or you're a traitor, or
there's actually on Instagram, there was one guy that commented that said we lost a good one when I posted a picture of my swastika being covered.
Wow. Oh, wow.
People attacked him. I have had white supremacists get a hold of me telling me that they're wanting to get out of the life. They don't know how to start, but they want to walk away and get their ink covered. And I've thought about getting a nonprofit off the ground and running, where there's not a whole lot of tattoo artists that will do what was done for me for free.
Yes.
The tattoo artist covered my chest. He did it for free, and we're talking about a $400 piece to cover all of that ink. And you got a lot of shops that refuse to do that, not because they don't want to get rid of the hate, but because they're selling a product. They can't just keep giving it away for free.
Right.
So I'm wanting to start a nonprofit or a business to where I can help white supremacists who want to get out of that life, whether it be counseling, relocating to get them away from the people that they need to get away from, or I can tell you right now, when you walk away from that life, you put a target on your back.
Yes.
A lot of people don't realize that. They think I'm doing this for clout and for popularity. I'm not. This isn't for popularity. This isn't for money. I haven't made a single dime since I started doing this. All it's done is get my parents threatened. It's gotten me threatened. It's caused problems in my marriage, honestly, because my wife is very fearful of what could possibly happen.
Right.
You know, we don't know if we're going to wake up one morning with a burning cross in our yard.
And all because you just decided to accept minorities.
And make a change.
Now with that, like you said, this all kind of started with the hate and the things that you were receiving in high school. Now, now that the shoe's kind of on the other side and it's your people, like, I guess, you know what I mean, for lack of a better word, your own people kind of turning on you, how does that mess with you mentally? I can imagine, because even with your tattoo covered, I can imagine there are still some even minorities and people of color that still feel some sort of way about you, just for, you know what I mean, that doubt you. And so I can imagine being kind of in the middle in limbo, not knowing kind of, I guess, where your team is.
Who I was as a person by the time I got my tattoo covered. So the idea that maybe he didn't change and he's trying to hide now, which if I were trying to hide, I wouldn't have made it a public post for it to be shared.
Right.
Not trying to hide. I'm doing this. My face is out there.
That's right.
So there's a lot of people that think that I haven't changed, and they're skeptical. And I 100% understand them being skeptical. That is totally fine. I know it takes more than just one act to show that you're not that type of person.
Right.
I have work to do, and I'm totally fine putting in the work. I feel like with my voice being out there now, I want to use it. And the reason I want to use it is, unfortunately, in the U.S., because of, and I'm sure this is not just the U.S., but because of how people of color are treated. If they had the ability to destroy systemic racism, they would have already done it.
Correct.
Unfortunately, they can't. It's going to take people like me to help with that, because I am a white male. I do have a voice, and I am a voice of the BLM. I don't care if people think that that's a terrorist group. I don't care what people think about it. Black lives do matter. All lives can't matter until Black lives matter. To sit there and say that all lives matter, and then you pull out a hunting bow out of your car and you fire a bolt into the crowd after screaming, all lives matter.
Right.
Yes.
Obviously they don't. You're just a racist sack of shit that was trying to find a reason to hurt somebody.
Yeah.
That's what you are.
And that's what a lot of people are saying now too. It's the amount of hate that's coming out of the woodwork. I have a friend in Georgia, and he hates trucks. He likes his sports cars. He likes his fancy cars. He's actually, well, I'm not going to say his profession, but he's got a pretty decent job, and he bought a truck. He bought a truck and tinted it out just so he could drive through certain neighborhoods. And like you were saying, like, better gas up real quick. Like, these are the things that he deals with. Like, his home is in Georgia, and he has to go in disguise in his vehicle just to go through certain neighborhoods to go to work. And that's the reality of a lot of people. A lot of, like, the hangings and stuff that were going on. People think that was new. A lot of people thought, like, all these the hangs that were coming were just recent.
Yeah.
A lot of these things aren't broadcasted. A lot of these things are hidden and swept under the rugs. But these hangings have been going on, haven't stopped. You know what I mean? I was gonna say since day one, they haven't stopped. And And that's again one of the worst case scenarios. Even the small things, like just as not hiring somebody for a job, or like just not giving somebody that opportunity because of the minority that they are. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. That's racism. Everyone thinks, oh, if I didn't call you the N-word, then I'm not racist. And that's not the case. There are still a lot of ways that you can oppress somebody without being blatant about it. And that's what I kind of... Please do.
So one thing that is racist that a lot of white people don't think is racist, is saying, wow, she is really pretty for a black girl. It's like that.
Yeah.
That is racist. People don't want to realize that it's racist. They don't want to agree that it's racist because they don't want to think that they have the capability to be that type of a person. So they ignore it. They think that it's something that they can just use anytime they want. To think that someone who happens to be black is beautiful for their skin color. That's a really shitty mentality. It's a really, really fucked up thing to have in your head.
And I'm sure as you have heard it as well, and a lot of colored women have, like, oh, I've never been with a black girl, or like, I've always wanted to be with a black girl, and things like that. It's just like, we definitely see, I'm sure you know, it's like a thing on the bucket list.
I received a lot of messages from women of color asking if they could be my first.
Oh my goodness, I didn't even think of that aspect of it.
Right, I bet there. See, that's the thing. Things come with so many different types of things that can happen when these types of things happen.
Now, I'm not going to get into anything that you may have said or done in like the worst of your life, but
if you're asking if I've ever put my hands on anybody out of hate, I have not.
Well, even words, like you said, like words can hurt and things like that. You have not?
No, I have done that.
Oh, my question would be like, with you being in the public eye now, has anybody contacted you and kind of told you how you might have impacted them personally? Like the things that you've said or maybe have done to them? Have they been kind of vocal about that? No?
None. No one has... Anybody of color that I know or have ran into that have gotten a hold of me has been nothing but positive. They told me that they're glad to see that I'm not who I was years ago.
Right.
Because I did lose contact with a lot of friends over the years, which happens when you have a family and, you work a lot. You don't lose them as a friend.
We're proud of you.
Right.
But yeah, I have gotten... The first 5 days, I received over 5,000 messages from 30 different countries.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm going to make a post with screenshots from all the locations.
That's crazy.
But I received so much love worldwide that I
from
never
people you never thought you would receive love from.
Yeah, and what was insane about it is I've never felt like I was loved, which kind of helps the anger that I used to feel. I didn't feel loved growing up. I didn't feel loved as a teenager because of the things I was dealing with. I didn't feel loved going through the court proceedings after my ex was attacked because, what she went through. I had to be there for her. And though it didn't physically, happen to me,
you still had the effects.
How much that does affect a man in that relationship.
Oh, for sure. Mm-hmm. Especially as a man, I understand that.
Yeah, I had to put all of my attention on her, and then, I've been with women who were addicts, who ended up. They'd start using heroin, or they used to use heroin, haven't done it in 10 years, and then I get to know them, we start dating, we get close, and all of a sudden they're back to doing drugs. And any bit of happiness that I could find, I would hold on to. So me not feeling loved and then receiving all of those messages, my wife would tell you that I cried like ugly cry. 3 days.
Yeah.
And it was such an insane feeling to have that many people tell you that they're so proud of you when you're not used to hearing those words. And I mean, I can't even explain the feeling. Just like,
you look like you're tearing up now.
a little bit.
Yeah.
But,
we love you, Dickie.
it definitely felt good, you know.
That's good, and I guess that was the whole purpose for this, right? Was to, you became a husband, a father of children. You had to make changes, and I guess you couldn't. How can you ignore what you are able to see now as being false? If it's false, it's false. And if somebody's giving me love and care and compassion and trying to teach me and show me a different way, and how can you still resist? Like, just pure resistance. Nope, I don't want it.
I hope you're still friends with all the people that you used to work with that stood in your car and didn't get out until you had a conversation.
You are.
Oh, well, I'd like to thank them as well on behalf of everybody.
I think they definitely did the world some good, and I do actually want to touch base on that.
Mm-hmm.
It is not the responsibility of people of color to change the mind of a racist. It's not their responsibility to try to convince someone that they're worth loving.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But it does help. It helped in my case.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing, like, how
that
can you
it's
get to
not
the
your
people that
responsibility?
don't want to talk to you? We have to all break in their cars and not leave until we go for a drink. Might not work out so well in some states.
Right.
So what advice would you give
It's
for
definitely
anybody?
not-
Well,
I'm sorry?
Sorry, what advice would you give for somebody in, not necessarily in your situation, because it sounds like you were kind of looking for a change, but for anybody that was still in the mindset that you were in, that maybe wouldn't be open to us sitting in the back of their car. So, like, what would you tell those people?
No one's ever asked me that.
Hmm.
So that's a good question. If I were sitting down with a white supremacist right now, what would I say to them?
Yes.
I would tell them it's not worth it. I'd ask them when the last time they were genuinely happy. I'd ask them, when was the last time you walked into a gas station and just felt so much anger because of the person of color in front of you, because of what they may be wearing, but the white girl behind you is wearing the same thing. You're totally fine with that. When was the last time you experienced that? When was the last time you didn't have a judgmental thought that ended up pissing you off? And that's the thing. The people who have a white supremacist mindset, they don't want to admit that they're angry all the time. But they are. They truly are. That's why they're so quick to snap. That's why they're so quick to start throwing the N-word out there. That's why they're so quick to say racial slurs and do different gestures towards people of color while they're being filmed. That's why you've got so many, I'm putting in quotes, Karens out there who are totally fine with calling the cops on a black UPS worker.
Right.
Who's just doing his job.
Yeah.
That is someone who is not happy. And it's all because of their mentality. It's all because of their own mind, which they have full control over. They may not be able to change overnight, but I would tell them that I would work with them.
Mm-hmm.
I would help.
And
the
that's
first person I would have them meet and get to know on a personal level is my neighbor.
Okay.
My neighbor is a black man, lives in a wheelchair. His girlfriend, lovely woman. She's my wife's best friend. That's the first person that I would introduce him to.
Mm-hmm.
What about him?
His name's Greg. He's a real laid-back guy. I'm not saying he's laid back because he's in a wheelchair.
Good stuff.
Really cool guy. I crack jokes with him like that all the time. We go back and forth at each other. But he is one of those guys that he can pick up on vibes. He can understand if somebody doesn't like him just by their stance, or whether it's racist or prejudiced because he's in a wheelchair, things like that. But he's so willing to just talk to everybody. He's so willing to be open and ask questions. And to see somebody who would be so easy to talk to with the white supremacist, watching that interaction, I feel like that white supremacist, by the end of their conversation, would have a different view on certain things. Mm-hmm. And that's why I would direct him to my
The wheelchair would probably be less intimidating too. He's not a big black man.
Yeah.
I understand that. Maybe you guys can work together. It does, because I can imagine that's also a part of it too. Is the intimidation that the black man is so tough and strong and superhuman, subhuman, or whatever they call us.
See, there's two different types of racist people. There's the kind that'll cross the street, and then there's the kind that'll walk through the crowd proudly
to get to you
and just glare at each and every one of them.
Yeah.
A lot of people that I know that I'm not going to say how I would know them. They're the type to cross the street because of intimidation. The people who are like me, the ones that walk through the group of black people, will glare at them to try to intimidate them so they don't feel intimidated.
Right.
It's all about who's got the bigger chest in that situation.
Right.
So, yeah, the levels of racism, they all need to go, but there are different levels.
That's right.
They all boil down to the same thing. They all boil down to hatred of others for skin color. And I got into an argument with a guy about, blacks are racist. Sure, they sure are. There are definitely some black racist people out there. That tends to happen when the people that they don't like have done nothing but discriminate them for the past 400 years in the country they live in.
Yeah.
They have a reason. They have a reason to hate the people that are continuing to this day oppress them one way or another. So,
but we have to change that, and because we definitely have to. I understand it too. I understand it all too well. But at the end of the day, the whole purpose of what's happening right now, has to be taken advantage of, and it can be positive. And we can make these change. We can't change everybody. We are not. It's just like the BLM movement. You want to say they're a terrorist group and look at them, they're looting and setting fires and this. That are those individuals. And because they are coming under the umbrella of the BLM and they're angry and all these things, that we cannot control everybody else's thought processes and actions and so forth. We can only control ourselves. But we can't not try. We can't not try to get through to these people and say, listen, this is you got to see. What I guess needs to happen is we need to figure out how we can do those things without banging our head against a brick wall.
And that's why I think the riots and the looters and all of that are actually beneficial to the fight. And I might be the odd opinion on this, but we've been protesting, marching in the streets and demanding change peacefully exactly. And it's only when they riot, only when they cause some havoc, only when there's chaos and making people a little uncomfortable that people are talking about it and actively changing it. Like, look at the no-knock horns now. Exactly. There's been a lot more change out of the chaos than there is from the peaceful, from the petitions and the marches and the walks and the vigils. There's a lot more coming out of.
Because all of these things that had happened,
and as sad as it is to say, that's how you get things done.
Because at the end of the day, all of these little changes that were happening, sports teams are changing their logos, their names. Aunt Jemima's changing pictures, all these different things, and everybody was in an uproar. And statues are getting torn down, but people miss the part that These things were being fought for years before 2020 came. The only thing that happened in 2020 was these were the crumbs that were getting thrown our way to be quiet now. But you don't know that those statues that were coming, those were protests and all types of things were happening for years to have things like that taken down.
Oh, I know.
Long before here.
Statues coming down, and here's why I agree with it. I agree with it. You know, I've heard the argument, well, you know, we don't want to forget our history. Okay? Hear me out on this. So, when a black man's walking down the street and he looks at a statue of a slave owner who's being represented in a positive light, you don't think that puts a negative impact on him? Mm-hmm. You don't think that might actually agitate any anger or hate he may have towards white people? Because this white guy who owned a bunch of black people is being celebrated.
Right.
And a lot of the statues in the U.S., they came up during the Jim Crow era. It was basically hey guys, we're going to put up some reminders so you know to stay in line.
Thank you.
You know exactly where you're going to end up.
Thank you.
That's what that was about. And then you got all these Confederate flag waving.
The flag. That's a whole nother episode.
Yeah.
Men and women. I'm just going to say men and women.
Yeah.
Bitching and complaining about statues. There's a reason that those statues are a problem and you're refusing. Oh, it's my heritage. The Confederacy lasted for 5 years. My daughter is older than the Confederacy. Don't sit here and tell me it's heritage. It was. How the hell is it heritage?
It was a treasonous. There's a lot of things. It wasn't heritage.
It lasted for 5 years. And they're going to call it heritage. That's not heritage.
It's just another smoke screen.
It's just like people are getting upset that the American flag is being burned on U.S. soil. The American flag is being burned because it's supposed to stand for freedom. Yet there's people that are still oppressed in this country. The people who are oppressed do not view that flag as a symbol of freedom. They view it as a symbol of oppression. It doesn't matter how a white man feels about that flag. Mm-hmm. Who gives a shit how a white man feels about the American flag? If he thinks it's a symbol of freedom, let him think it's a symbol of freedom. But when you have a black man who looks at that flag as a symbol of his oppressors, he's allowed to feel that way. He is absolutely allowed to feel that way, and he's allowed to do with whatever he wants with that flag. If we're allowed to break federal law by putting that flag on T-shirts and changing it to where it's black and white, with a blue strip in the middle, which is also against the law, to make it into stickers, people getting it tattooed on their body. If we're allowed to do all these things that are illegal to the American flag,
the bikini,
black man burns it, but you're going to complain that a black man burns it, which is the only way you're allowed to destroy a flag. It has to be burned. Like federal law states that an American flag, when it's tattered and torn, needs to be burned.
You can't toss it in the dump.
They're the only ones that are doing it right, and you're mad at them because you think it's a disgrace to the flag, yet you're walking around in a fucking American flag man thong so patriotic because I'm wearing a banana hammock with my fucking flag on. That's not patriotism. Patriotism is not only loving your country, but loving the people that are there to help your fellow man in your country. To say that they shouldn't be a part of this country. They need to come back where they came from. You have Mexicans crossing the border whose children are getting taken from them and put in
cages,
ICE facilities, and then 1,500 kids come up missing, or they're put in the sex trade, or they're being sexually assaulted, and your argument is, well, maybe they shouldn't have tried to cross the border. You're not worried about what your government is doing to those kids, but you're going to say that those people that are trying to save their children from the country that they were living in and put them in somewhere where it's supposed to be all about love and prosperity, and you're going to tell me that it's okay for those children to be sexually assaulted, put into child sex trafficking, or to end up dead or in cages. You're telling me that's completely fine?
Speak on it.
But all lives matter.
Yeah, speak on it, sir.
Wow.
And I hate those 3 words.
I know. It's been a very exhausting fight.
So now where we are,
I'm here to help. I am here to help you guys fight.
and I
we
believe
appreciate
that, and I
that.
appreciate it. And now I want to, you said like I have a lot of work to do, and you understand people being, skeptical and so forth. So you spoke a little bit on what your hopes and what your dreams are, and in starting a nonprofit to help other white supremacists escape, because that's what it's escape. I need to be rescued. I need to what is that show where they're married to have 15, 20 wives on a compound somewhere, and the children, and they're running away, they're escaping in the middle of the night to get out of this, cult is a good word for that. And these people, what you're saying, and from my understanding now, talking to you and reading up about this, that it is actually something that if you are a white supremacist, if you are a racist, and you've surrounded and lived your life this way, and you've decided, I don't want this anymore, this isn't working for me, you need help to escape.
That's one thing I never really considered.
It's like a gang. It's blood in, blood out. I know a guy who got out of white supremacy. He was a member of the Aryan Brotherhood. He got shot in the face, lost an eye, still alive.
Just for trying to get out of it?
Yeah, because he left.
Mm-hmm. Well, that sounds like something that, really need. I had no idea that, I just assumed if that's what your choice was, you just go ahead about your business and keep it moving.
And I think that's a lot of the misconception too from our side, because we're not in that circle, right? So we don't understand what gets you into these things and what can't take you out of these things. You know what I mean? So that was eye-opening for me, just in the fact that you said some of these people do need that escape, that help to get out and be away, and that's something that I don't think a lot of people of color would consider, or you know what I mean, or even would think was a factor in all of the whole racism thing. So thank you for opening our eyes to that.
No problem.
So what's next for you?
I have no problem using my story and the things that I know and that I've experienced as a way of education, because that's the only way we can come together.
Realistically, you can reach a lot more people that need to hear that than we can.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that.
So what's next for you, Dickie? What are you hoping to do and get accomplished here?
So my goals are, at some point in my life, sooner rather than later, I want to stand up in front of Congress. I want to be in front of Congress, and I want to do everything I can to have the KKK labeled as a terrorist organization.
Yes.
Because that's what they do. They instill fear using political motives, using racial motives. They are, by definition, a terrorist organization. People like that, groups like that, they need to be destroyed.
Yes.
Absolutely. That's one of my goals.
Now, for the people that are saying the KKK is the same as BLM, what would you? I'm sure you've heard it.
Right.
Until until the KKK has Black and Hispanic members, how are they the same? BLM will scream the names of white and Hispanic people who have been gunned down by police officers.
Yeah.
They don't view it as just Black people.
Right. There is no discrimination.
They view it as. So when it comes to the BLM, I've gotten into a couple different conversations with people who are pro BLM, who they don't quite see eye to eye on why it's called Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
Whether it be the statistics of the amount of people who have died by police officers, or what have you. My view on it, I think the reason why they decided to stick with Black Lives Matter is because it brings attention. When you hear those words, and then you hear somebody say all lives matter, you know exactly.
Opens a dialogue.
Right.
And it makes a lot of sense.
Why it's called Black Lives Matter when it comes from, police reform. I understand that, but I think it kept the name because when a racist person hears those words, it's like nails on a chalkboard.
Mm-hmm.
We need to keep that name. We need to have every street in the U.S. painted.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who doesn't agree with Black Lives Matter, that's fine. Even if you're not screaming all lives matter, if you think that they're just, maybe you don't see it from their side. Maybe you think that, they got equal opportunity employment, and they got all these other systems in place to help the Black community. I don't see why they think they're being oppressed. I can give you example after example after example of how they are. And what amazes me is you got so many people who are set in their ways that they refuse to listen to a word I have to say. They think that they know everything. They know what the cause is. There were some BLM protesters that did pull guns. I don't remember what city it was in. Was that a stupid choice? Yeah, that was. Did that make the BLM look bad for a minute? Yeah, it did. But when you have people saying, oh, well, this officer, he needs to get fired or go to prison, and then those same people turn around and say, well, not all cops are bad.
Mm.
If not all cops are bad, why isn't he in handcuffs?
Yeah.
It's a police report showing something that didn't happen but did happen on camera.
Right.
Testifying. I'm sure you've heard that term.
Yes.
Police officers, instead of testifying in court, are testifying. They are lying on the stand to protect each other. The term thin blue line exists for a reason. People didn't just make that up and hope that it sticks. It exists because they call it that because it does truly exist. Police officers will go out of their way to protect themselves. And the ones that don't, the ones that stand up against corruption within their departments, the ones that stand up and say, hey, media, check this out. Look at what this officer's doing.
Right.
They get crucified.
And are in danger. And are in danger. They're on a job that they put their lives in danger every day as it is. And now if I speak out, I have to worry, is my partner going to come when I call? Are they going to help me out? So that's
a stray bullet somewhere.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, unfortunately.
Kind of sounds like a gang mentality, doesn't it?
Right. Well, I'm glad that you were able to change your ways and find that love and compassion and that you needed to help you get to where you are today. And I wish you all the success in the world, and I want to talk to you again. I want to keep in touch with you and see how the progress is going. If there's anything that we can do to help out with information about how to get this nonprofit going and get the word out there that we didn't even realize or know about. And I thank you for letting us know that this is actually a whole lot deeper than just leaving a white supremacy group. If you want to do it, there's dangers involved. And, I hope that you and your family stay safe and, stay healthy.
Yeah.
And we can't wait to see where this is going to go for you and your family, Dickie. I really, really hope that everything turns out the way that you need it and you get the support you need to get that program going.
Yeah, I'm working pretty hard on getting this stuff up and running. And, with working a full-time job and being a father the second, I get off the clock, it's strenuous. I'm trying to find some help. I obviously can't afford to pay anybody. But
well, I'm sure when you decided to get your tattoo covered, you weren't anticipating everything after being a public figure and someone that the world is looking up to.
That when I got it covered, my Facebook was private. I was asked to make that one post public so that it would be shared. And so far, I think it's sitting at like 23,000 shares and like 51 or 52,000 likes. And it took off. I was not expecting any of this, but the fact that it's happened,
it's beautiful.
I don't feel obligated to keep pushing forward, but I know I need to. So I
And we
have
need
to,
you too. Thank you. Yes.
You're welcome.
Mhm.
Whatever I can do, I really want to help. I
Yes.
really want things to change.
And you are. You really are.
Like, I don't want things to change just for us. I want things to change for our kids. Our kids,
Yes.
the next generation. That was one of the reasons why I got my tattoo covered. I kept it for 10 years out of shame. And when I found out that I was going to be a father, I sat down in my kitchen. I can send you pictures. I sat down in my kitchen with tattoo equipment, and I tattooed a big red X over it myself.
Yes, I saw.
And when that didn't stick, I didn't know what to do. I had a family. I had a kid on the way.
You have to explain that to your child.
Well, my kids didn't really know too much about my tattoo.
Yes, obviously, but like at some point, I'm sure it would have been a conversation as they got older if that was the case. It was still there.
My daughter has a general understanding. The best way I could explain it to a 5-year-old was, Daddy, his tattoo meant he didn't like people. And this new tattoo is to cover up that he didn't like people because he loves everybody now. That was the only way I can explain that to her. And I wasn't going to tell her, 15 years ago I walked away from that life and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So I had to make it sound like all of this happened now. And if you get on my Facebook and you look at the videos that I took on my phone of me on the news for the first time, you can actually hear my daughter say she was proud of me.
I did hear that. I did watch that. Yes, I did.
Talk about tears. Put that phone down. I'd just gotten home from what were we doing that day? I don't remember. But I was holding her. Oh, I just got off of work because I did the interviews right after work. And I got home. I was off the next day, so I stayed up. I wanted the kids to see Daddy on TV. And as soon as she said those words, when I put my phone down, I just lost it. It's so surreal. Even now, I'm still getting messages constantly from people. And I want everybody to know they are free to message me whenever they want. And I've responded to every single message that I've got. Yeah, how tiring my thumbs are. Like, it's
Well, you make sure that you keep it going, and you will, I think, be successful, and know that you can't change everybody, but you can make a difference in this world. And somebody heard you, and somebody heard
Reach all the way to Canada, Israel. You're making a lot of difference, and for that we do appreciate it.
Iceland,
That's insane.
Yeah.
All right,
from
Dickie.
one host.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us. We appreciate it.
And we'll be in touch for sure.
Right, and thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Make sure you follow MediaWorks Studio on your favorite social media platforms. And until again, stay healthy, stay safe. See ya.